Hi, everyone. I hope this you're fine. Everything is well. I'm getting tongue-tied here. And interesting, it's not out of nerves. I just couldn't get my thoughts out of my head. So there you go. Mindset stuff. Sometimes we're not nervous, but sometimes our thoughts just don't come together, even though I had a plan. So that it's a good example of me showing to you that that can happen, and you just keep going and work through it. Anyway, so what I wanted to talk about tonight is visualization, and I've been busy teaching clinics. This weekend I had two. I will admit it was a very busy and fun weekend. I was a little tired when I was done, but well worth it. And much of what I talked, not much, but what came up often with riders was me talking about visualization and how effective it is and how it can be work both for you and against you depending upon the mindset you're using. So I wanted to talk a little bit about it and the science behind it and some examples of using it and some tips you can input into it when you do some visualization. So what is visualization? Well, it's really thinking in detail about your plan, or it can be done in anything. It doesn't have to be in for equestrian. It can be done in any kind of thing. You can do it before you do a talk. You can do it before you go to work and have a big meeting, and you want it to go really well. And what it is just you visualizing in detail whatever it is you want to happen, and hopefully with a positive mindset, right? So really in detail, step by step, what you feel is going to happen or what you want to happen. And there's actual science behind it that the brain, when you visualize, looks at it as practice. So is every time you do it, particularly in fine detail, and you really think about it and really work at it and every part of it, like with riding, like thinking about how it's going to feel when you ride, how you're what it's going to look like as you're jumping a course, what types of distances you're going to get, or whatever it may be, that you're really in detail and you really tap into, not only saying out loud, I'm going to do this and this, or saying in your head, I'm going to do this and this, but actually feeling it happening, what the whole situation is going to be like, the feel, the smell, the noises, whatever you think's going to be there, that you really tap into all of that, so that your brain and your body together actually are practicing. It really is happening, even though it's not. You're acting like it is. And so the science has really shown that this makes a huge effect, and it's used a lot with athletes, and it's used in in other things as well. So what are some examples of visualization? You can set aside daily times to do it. You can do it, say, before your ride, or as you're warming up. Really visualize a positive outcome. Like, even if you're riding, just it doesn't have to be for big events like horse shows and things. It can be daily, because you can keep building on it and using it and getting good at it and then being comfortable with it. So as you're warming up before a ride or before a lesson, just visualize everything in detail. And if you have certain things that you don't do as well, that you struggle with, because struggle is where you learn, maybe it's a canter transition or something like that. So then even before you get started, it's like, I'm going to visualize really positive outcomes with my canter transition, and really, the whole the whole steps of the transition, how you feel, how you're going to support your horse, how you're going to ask, all those things, for example. So you can do things like that. You can visualize just generally very positive outcomes, and you having a positive attitude no matter what comes your way. So that's another way, thing you can visualize. You can visualize at night, before you go to bed, and that's a great time, because it right before you go to sleep, and then you can kind of sleep on that, is to visualize and think What's my day tomorrow? Let's say you're going to a horse show. What's my day tomorrow at the horse show going to look like? Not only what will my trip look like, but I'm going to do it the night before the horse show and visualize my whole day going really well. Everything from, eating a healthy breakfast to sleeping well to waking up on time to everything going smoothly, whether you braid your horse, groom your horse, everything about it going very smoothly. And then at the show, you can then visualize before you ride a course or go into a flat class or whatever discipline you do and whatever it is you're going to be doing showing, is visualize that whole thing going really well in detail. So it's a flat class. What's my walk going to look like? What's the trot transition going to look like? What are my canter transitions going to look like? What's it going to feel like? How am I going to navigate the ring so that I get the best exposure? So you're really visualizing all of that happening in detail. And so those are some ways you can do it. You can do it also like while you're grooming your horse or whatever, but you can do it wherever you want and whenever you want. And the more you do it, the more successful you're going to be. That's the fun part about it. So some tips around it. One thing I would say is when you start going down the negative path, thinking about what you think is going to go wrong, remind yourself that you're visualizing there as well. So every time you think, and the brain has a negative bias, and the brain wants to go to those negative things. So when you catch yourself doing that and using negative language, like, oh, I think I'm going to, say for jumping, I know I'm going to mess up this distance, or, I always have this problem when my horse, canters, or my horse always does this wrong, whatever it may be. Every time you talk about that, you're visualizing and training your brain and practicing negative results. So I think one of the biggest tips is to understand that whatever you vocalize and visualize and keep repeating in your head, you're practicing. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So you really want to work on practicing when you catch yourself going down the negative path, practicing positive things. So that's very important. Again, making sure when you visualize, you do it in real detail, like smell, sounds, sights, feel, particularly with a horse, feel of everything, so that you can really, and like say you are someone who jumps courses, or you ride Western and you do reining patterns, or you ride dressage and you do dressage patterns, that you can visualize each part of them in detail in the feel of what they're going to be like, where you will be in the ring when you do this, how you're going to ride this turn, whatever that may be, how you're going to do this spin, if you're reining, whatever that may be, really visualizing it in full detail. Not just saying, oh, I'm going to visualize it and go, well, you can think that, and that's not a bad thing, but to really practice it and to really use it to help you to practice each part of it, visualize everything in detail. And visualize where in those places. So I'm going to use the canter transition, for example, because riders often get ahead of themselves in canter transitions and kind of throw their body at horses, or throw their reins away. The horse loses their balance and they can't get the canter, or they don't get it right away, or they don't get a good canter. So I talk about doing it in three sections, so first you got to organize and balance and, add leg and collect your horse. So your horse is balanced and energized, then ask, and then maintain it, so that you visualize those three steps. And if you have struggle in one of those steps, you visualize yourself not struggling in that step. You visualize yourself doing it really well. So that's another thing to think about, to really be careful about how you think and how you talk to yourself about it, and where you want to improve on things, that you really visualize yourself doing things well. And boy, we can beat ourselves up a lot, thinking about all the things we're not going to do well. So it's really important to think about what you will do well, and how you can also, another tip is to visualize how you'll handle mistakes, right? So if you tend to be someone who beats themselves up for mistakes, then visualize that you're going to handle mistakes well and learn from them. You're jumping a course of jumps. You don't have the best first, the first distance is a little weak. And instead of beating yourself up for it, you're going to visualize even ahead of time. If that happens to me, it's possible, if that happens, that I will um, think about how I want to correct things, and move on instead of beating myself up for it. So if that's one, and if that's something that you really do a lot, that could be your whole focus of your visualization. Like, I really just need to go in the ring and look at all my mistakes that I'm going to have, because we always have mistakes, and embrace them with a positive mindset and correct them. And that could be your focus of your visualization, thinking, I can't think about too many things at once. Maybe that's what I want to focus on. So look at, what it is you really want to work with, and then, like, say you get good with the idea of, now I'm being more positive about and learning from my mistakes. Now I really want to go ahead and visualize my whole course in detail, or you can go at it in different directions, whatever you feel works for you. Play with it and test it out. I mean, I think that is really important. And it's also important to make it a daily practice. Don't use it as something that you do, oh, I'm going to do it when I go to a horse show or whatever. Get really practiced at it, because the more you practice visualization, the better it'll be for you. So, and you can practice it in little ways off the horse, that, at home doing things, like whatever, you're working on a project or doing something at home and you're visualizing it going really well. So you just can kind of practice it with the tool of visualization. And then make it a practice that, say, you do it daily. Maybe you get up in the morning and it could be about your whole day. You sit there and visualize positive things happening in your day and how you will manage things if they won't. And then you could add a visualization process, is that as you're grooming your horse, you're visualizing a really good ride, and then reinforcing it again when you get on and warm up. And like I said earlier, you could do it before you go to bed. Every night before you go to bed, you're visualizing a great day tomorrow, and in detail, depending upon your day. So it can be around riding, but it can be around other things at work too. It could be at work. You have this big presentation to give at work, and visualizing that going really well. So it can be used in many different ways. And the more you use it, the more effective it can become for you. And the more comfortable, you can get around it. So give it a try. Really get out there and give it a try. And it's amazing how quickly, even in like when I'm giving a clinic, how quickly it can shift your mindset. And sometimes and I'm trying to remember now, I remember it happening, I can't remember the word I used, but with one rider, I just shifted something and talking to her about picturing the ride going really well. That she was being kind of nervous and things, and she was riding okay, but she was struggling in some places. And I just, used a different word and helped her kind of around the visualizing it going well. And all of a sudden it was like, wow, and she rode really well. So it can work really quickly, and it can work for long-term things as well. So I highly recommend it. That's something to take it, bring along, learn and practice it for your riding, but also use it, in your life in general. You'll be surprised about what a difference it'll make. So have a wonderful day, rest of your day. It's already evening here. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me at lisa@mindfulquestioning.com. If you're like struggling with, like you hear me talk about some of these things and you really want to do it, but it's not working for you and you need some support, guidance, contact me. We can set up a discovery call for coaching. And if that's something that sounds good to you, we can, do some coaching, which will help you, support you through some of these practices. So have a wonderful rest of your night, and I will see you again soon.